start this morning with talking about comedy. We're going to kind of switch that around. Last night, a friend of mine called, and we were just having a conversation about camp. How's it going? What are we teaching the kids? Blah, 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 blah. Some more blah. Oh, it's Mr. Hahn, my friend from Grapevine. And so, one of the things he goes, I love it when you talk about what it is, the difference between being a champion and a chumpion. And I laughed. I'm like, no, we didn't give him that lecture. He's like, you got to. You got to talk about it. And I was like, okay, great. So this morning, while they're warming up, I'm going to do a shortened version of how I start off every camp that I coach for my kids. And it's called, what's the difference of being a champion versus a chumpion? Okay? And they're like, what is a chumpion? So that's where we're going to start. Okay? One of the things that this activity allows you as students, and even us as educators, as teachers, it allows us to create worlds. Okay? And one of the things that you have to be able to do is to be able to open your mind and take critiques. This whole activity is based on being critiqued. That's what it is. So you've got to open yourself to take a critique. So how did that happen? We kind of started last night. That's how this whole thing came about. Is one of the ways that you will become a better performer is when you can look at a performance holistically and honestly and be able to critique it very objectively. One of the things that we get real bad about, and especially from a student perspective, is we think about the way something should look. Well, it doesn't look, or it doesn't have a look, or it doesn't look like. Okay?
Real quick, when we watch the performances, we will go down to 226 only because it will, you can't hear, I can even hear you talking in the room. It's right here. It's like right there. And so they were very nice. And she goes, no, when we have rooms, we can hear people on the chalkboard, everything. So it's not that y'all were bad of any sort, they just could hear. So for the performances, we'll go down here. And I said, well, in the afternoon, we will need these rooms, and they will be doing some stuff. And I said, I don't want to make them just have to whisper. It's defeating the purpose of performing. So I just wanted to let you know that.
So we're on 226.
After that, we'll go down to 226. Well, we didn't know until we got yelled at. Not yelled at. We didn't know.
We'll be down literally like about 5.
You're fine. You're fine.
5 minutes. We'll be down.
You're fine. Not a problem.
It's to be able to critique the performance holistically and honestly, and take away the sense of the look. Did they present a performance, and this even has to look in the mirror sometimes, did you present a performance that you would be proud of, number one? Okay? And then also to being proud of your performance is, do you have your lines memorized? Okay? Mr. Garner talked about something yesterday that's very, very, very important. And I think as students of this activity, future learners, educators, we have to be true to author's intent. Okay? There was an HI a couple years ago, and they, what's the deaf woman? Miracle Worker. There we go. A young man took Miracle Worker and turned it into an HI. And there were people across the state that were like, oh my God, this is just brilliant. It's brilliant. But I kept hearing this from kids. I heard from a couple coaches, a couple judges, why are they doing that? That's no way in which the story was meant. Did the player write it that way? Why are they doing that? Okay? If you were to write a piece of literature, okay, or an oratory, how would you like somebody to take that piece of work and completely change its intent? It kind of tick you off, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it upset you? So then what gives us the right to take literature and to change it? There are times in this, like I said, I'm the crazy coach of the 33. Even if you switch words, people are like, but I just switched a couple words. That playwright, that author, put those words in an order for a specific reason. And if you become a Nobel Peace Prize winning Drama Desk Award playwright, this award-winning author, then you get an opportunity to do that. But until then, be honest and true to the script. Those people that do that are chumpions because they're afraid to do the work. Another champion is not being a good audience member or a good community member. We've gotten real bad in this activity about creating these cliques and these groups. One of the things I love about this activity and what makes people champions, and when you start to do this for a couple of years, you start to meet national champions or have them on your teams, the one difference that I've noticed is this. Those people that are champions, they look at the whole activity, and if the person in that round competing against them is not their best, that champion's not their best. And it's not about winning. It's so not about winning. It's about taking performances and making them better. And we as coaches have got to get back to that. Remember, I'm doing twice. I'm doing double duty. So as coaches, we've got to get back to that. And we've got to make kids accountable. We've got to make them accountable for their table work. We've got to make them accountable for their research. What's the time period of your show, of your play? Okay? What do you know about your author? Maybe your author was an abused victim. Do you know that? And then which makes it, and then you think, how does that make it different? Then you know that those words that that writer wrote have a true effect, and they've lived through it. They've been baptized by fire. Have you done your research? One of the things out of this camp, and I can speak for Mr. Garner in this because we talked together, and I can speak for Ms. Gossett if we work together at other camps. If you leave this camp without a sense of it's not about the win, then we have failed you. Last night I'm watching Hot Minute. It was amazing, just in those few short hours yesterday, how much work you guys put into your stuff. I wish you could have been here last night. It was amazing. The first day, it was wow. Like, we were blown away last night. I was like, okay, this is going to work. This camp is going to work. Okay? But you've got to get your mindset into, for the next couple days, and like everybody said, I will be the harsh, crazy one. When we critique, it's not about hurting your feelings. I would rather be honest with you. That's, we keep talking about the word honesty. If we're honest with each other, if you're honest with yourself, if you're honest with your text, your performances will be amazing. And the swag will come. I promise you that. I can guarantee that. But to be a champion, you've got to be able to take everything you hear. And I forgot to say this the other day. Back when Mr. Garner and I taught at Duncanville together, we hosted a tournament, a very large tournament last weekend of the TFA season. So people were just, oh my God, I get my last points. The tournament was huge. It was always just, to me, it was too big. I was like, why are we doing this? Bruce, why are we doing this? Barbara, why are we doing this tournament? We had a gentleman, because our kids had to recruit judges, like all of you do. And he was about 75 to 80 years old. Really can't get a real gauge on how this guy was. He was old school. Okay? Dressed very dapper, just very, very nice African-American gentleman. And he went off to the side and spoke to Bruce, and he said, can I have a kid going to the round with me, and I'll tell them what I'm thinking. We found out he was illiterate, could not write. Could think beautifully, but couldn't write, okay? So it took a lot for him to confess that to begin with. So I admired the guy from that point forward. I was like, whoa. And Bruce was like blown away. He's like, he's like, come here. I need to know what just happened. I'm like, what? So he tells me. The guy comes back, and the kid that we sent, one of our squad members, we sent with him to write the ballots. In prelim round 1, he judged around the pros. So we thought, well, we're not going to put him in HRDI. We'll be nice to the guy. But we're not going to put him in a main event because, it's qualifying last weekend. We need to qualify. This man's pros ballots came back, and I swear to you, some of the best ballots I've ever seen. Because he was that age, and he's lived a life. And I cannot think of the name of the piece. I wish I could. I'm so sorry about that part. But the kid that ended up winning pros at our tournament, we had like 110 pros at the tournament. Just stupid entry numbers. The kid that ended up winning pros, in round one, that man gave him the one. And on the ballot, so he cried. It was a hard story to tell. So whenever you get a ballot.
Really hard story.
Yeah, yes, a really
Yeah.
hard story to tell.
Yeah.
Yes. So whenever you get a ballot, here's what will make you a champion. Take away what you perceive that judge to be and read that ballot from a perspective. If they've got a question, this didn't make sense, or I don't understand, don't look at that ballot and go, oh, well, they're just stupid, or oh, they just don't get it. What is it that they did not understand? That gives you a point of reference to go, okay, let me go look at unit beat, event number 26 or number 4, because he didn't get it, or she didn't get it. Read each ballot, take every critique that you ever get. Now there may be sometimes critiques, you should stand on one foot and bark like a dog. And you go, okay, that's their perspective. It doesn't fit what I want to say, but don't just take the ballot and go, oh, well, they're just stupid, or they're just crazy. And we get caught up in sometimes going straight to the bottom of the ballot and looking at that number at the bottom. That number, how people choose those is just as random as the day is long. But if you are telling an honest story with true sense of conviction, that number will be the number that you, in your mind, go, oh, okay, I agree with that number. But don't go to the bottom of the ballot first, okay? Last, and we're off to the thing. Every time you tell this story, you have an obligation and a responsibility to tell it like it's the first time you've ever told it. You have an obligation and a responsibility. When you turn it on autopilot, then be done with it. Change the piece. If you get so to a point where you go, I just don't feel it anymore, then either comb it and just make more discoveries, or be honest and go, it just doesn't work anymore. It's like when we talked about the piece, Killer Halloween. I love that HI. But somewhere in December when you do Killer Halloween, there's a question. It's Christmas time. And I'm just being honest, you go, it's Christmas. And it's time of Halloween. They need to change it after that time. And it's okay to do that. Don't get caught up, and this is what the whole thing was about. Do not connect yourself or chain yourself down to the piece. There's thousands of millions of pieces of literature that are available to you. Go do what you like. I mean, we had a couple hours to figure out who you are, create a relationship, and hand you literature. There's millions of pieces of literature out there. Read, 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 read. Stop making your coaches work so hard. They've got stuff to do. They've got to order buses. They've got to do entries. They got to, write purchase orders. They got to make sure, that, Crazy Joe got a haircut. I mean, there's too much stuff that we have to do to begin with. Find and discover you. That's what this thing is about. And every national champion I've ever known or have on my cell phone or have the pleasure of knowing personally, they will all say the exact same thing. Michael Benjamin Washington, 2-time national champion, is on Broadway, has done Broadway. Michael Urie, national champion, did the video, Thank You for Judging. It's out there on somebody's streaming. You should watch it. Both those young men will tell you the same thing. This activity will change your life. Read, discover you, and all your nuances. Last thing, where I gotta go. No fear. What are you afraid of? That there's no automatic reset button? And there's not. But sometimes we learn more from failure. Sometimes we learn more from failure than our successes. Stop being afraid. Stop looking at the dialect and going, See, I don't have time for kids like that on my team. What do you have to fear? We're playing pretend to begin with. Just pretend more. I don't understand what there is to fear. Oh, I don't know if I can do, I don't know if I can play Latino. You are Latino. Shut up, play Latino. It's like stop putting these barriers in your way and stop making excuses. Those people that are champions, no excuses and no fear. And it's not that they're cocky. Oh, no, it's not that they're cocky. Because I've had young men and young women on my team just graduated from. Was in 3 state finals. But by his senior year, he got cocky. And he knew he was all that in the bag. And I'm telling you guys, karma, and I don't know, this is not a religious conversation, but in regards to karma and this activity, it will come back to you. There has to be a sense of humility. You win with grace, you lose with grace. Those people in a round, if you're in final round, and you take second, congratulate on that stage. Take the time to congratulate that child who won first. Because don't you want the same thing? And we've got to get out of the mindset. I know I said stop, but see, I hit the button. I got to top right now. To be in the top 6 at a tournament, what is that? How's that a failure? Stop looking at second place as the first loser. And I know coaches that actually say that. Dear friend of all 3 of ours, young lady, they just had the national tournament, and she took second in oratory. And they're at dinner. Their team is at the squad dinner. And the coach just goes in and starts, well, when I watched your final round performance, you didn't take that pause, and you didn't take that breath, and you didn't do that, blah, blah, blah. And this is a very respected coach in the country. The girl looked at him and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Wyckoff, the second is not good enough for you.
But you ruined my experience. Sorry.
No, you're right on time. And it did. It ruined that young lady's experience. 13 rounds. Competing 13 times. She takes second in the country. Yes, celebrate that. But he ruined her experience. And so she will live the rest of her life going, maybe I should have, maybe I could have. Don't ever put yourself in that place. Every performance you give, have no doubt, no fear, and leave it there. And if you go, it wasn't my best performance, okay. What do you have? You've got another round. Okay? So, any questions real quick about shirt lift last night? Anybody have any issues or problems? As they were doing the guy pose. Okay, now Ms. Gossett, I asked them a question. I said, did y'all have any questions with your guy post last night? Anybody ask a question?
They didn't?
They didn't. So
Okay.
today in their work sessions,
We're going to ask you stuff. I've already asked people that before.